Like, I feel like
Yeah.
in any other area of life, if you said this works 100% of the time, we would say that doesn't sound right, right? There's so many different unique situations. But something about financial literacy, we establish these rules of thumb about how much you should save, whether you should buy a house, whether you should buy a car, and we act like they work 100% of the time for every single person and that our minds should never be changed about it. And to me, that's really dangerous.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you, Brenton, 100%, because, well, I've lived long enough now where pretty much everything's changed. You kind of you kind of think, well, you're exactly right. And what I've learned with more people I work with, because I coach business owners and everything, I work with a lot of different people. Welcome to Sharpen the Spear podcast, where we help manufacturing executives command the front and win the floor. I'm Richard Walsh, creator of the Sharpened Impact methodology, and I spent decades helping leaders transform frontline teams, unlock hidden profit, and capture capacity they didn't even know they had. If you want to see where your leadership gaps are costing you and how to fix them, head over to grittolead.com and run the free Sharpened Impact Simulator today. Let's sharpen your edge and get started. And we are back on STS Sharpen the Spear podcast with another incredible guest. I've got Brenton Harrison in the house, well, the virtual house. And Brenton, as we always do in STS, no one knows Brenton better than Brenton. So, Brenton, give us some backstory, bring us up to speed. We're going to have an incredible conversation.
Absolutely. Well, as you said, my name is Brenton Harrison. I am a financial advisor. I'm based in Nashville, Tennessee. That's where I'm born and raised. And I'm the founder of a financial services firm called New Money, New Problems. So we try to be pretty literal in who we target. We work with first and second generation high income earners. So we pretty intentionally target people who are not yet wealthy. We want to partner with people with whom we work and be part of that journey to wealth, where maybe they're experiencing something they never experienced before. No one in their family has been in that situation. And we're kind of that Sherpa, for lack of a better term, that guides them up the mountain and helps them get where they're trying to go.
Well, I love that because I'll tell you, as you know, probably way better than I do, uh, the majority of our country here in the US is suffering from a lack of financial literacy. Okay, whether that's by design or whatever, I'm not, we won't even go down that trail. But I'm just saying, like most of us, even we can earn money. I spent 20 years earning a lot of money and no clue what to do with it.
Yeah,
So guess what happened? It tends to evaporate.
it flies away when you don't pay attention to
That's right.
it.
That's right. So I love this topic. I love experts who see this, and I want to put this in the right way. It's a market, it's a niche, right? We get that, but it's so needed. I mean, the to me, Brenton, is the ability to get someone literate in this field, get them down the right path, and continue to guide them, obviously. But that's a game changer and a life changer for a lot of people because 20 years goes by very fast. I'll just tell you, it's a blink of an eye, and next thing you know, you're doing the woulda, shoulda, coulda.
Yeah, it's hard to get people to understand there's like this gap, not just in financial literacy as a society, but the odd thing about it is you get to this point where it's like everybody, because we do a good job of telling other people what they need to do. So when everybody sees someone who's not doing well, there's the assumption that the reason is a lack of financial literacy or a lack of motivation. So when you look at the resources that are available, they're typically catered to someone who earns a lower income level, and it's still very much needed. But I think there's a lack of appreciation for the fact that, like, hey, even at higher income levels, if you don't have that literacy, there is a consequence to it. And it's something that we've kind of dedicated ourselves to fixing, where there's these forgotten groups of people who earn a high amount of income. And because they earn well, there's the assumption that they know what they're doing, and they don't. And there are some really, really heavy consequences to going into the world, having large amounts of money or access to it, and not knowing what to do with it.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, I try not to think about my first 20 years. I mean, I wrote a book about it, so I can't really get away from it, and just the missteps and just here's one of the things, Brent, like I'm rolling, right? I'm starting to make a lot of money. I get paid a lot for what I do. I'm making incredible things. And here's the fallacy. You think it's never going to end. That's one thing. Okay. So like I was always, I'll just go make more money. That was my solution to all my problems.
That's a lot of people's solution.
Right.
That's been my father's solution since I was a child, and I say that jokingly, even though it's true. But we all have experiences in childhood and the things that we observe that play a role in shaping how we deal with life, with money. And my dad is an emergency room physician. He's an extremely hard worker, and because emergency room physicians are paid by the hour, quite literally, if he needed more money, he could just go work
Right.
more, right? He wasn't
Right.
on salary. So like he wasn't being, wrong when he said, I need more money, I'll go work more. And now, most emergency room physicians, they work 12-hour shifts. And somebody who's working really, really hard may work, 12 to 15 12-hour shifts in a month. I mean, back then, my dad and his cohorts, they were working 24-hour shifts, and he would work 18, 24-hour shifts in a month. I mean, he was always working, never missed any family things. But there were so many people who depended on him financially that his thought process was, if I just go pick up another shift, I can pay for that thing and that thing. And he never really thought, well, what if I just save the money from that last shift? Then I won't go have to work that 19th shift. And never being able to turn that corner is something that if you don't, pay attention to it, it kind of seeps into your life as an adult too.
Yeah. It becomes an operating system, in your life. And I realized that myself was just, well, go get more and I could buy this. And I thought getting everything for cash was a great thing. Oh, 50,000, I got 50,000. I'll go buy this machine and I own it. Aren't I wise? Okay. And then I realized I always tell people, I go, yeah, it's beautiful. It's $52,000. Now I could have rented the same machine for the 6 months a year I needed it for about a grand a month. Then I would have had how much? 45,
Hmm.
45,000 to invest into something.
Yeah.
I roll and do that every year. But I'm not that smart.
Well,
I'm just
some of it's
rich.
well-meaning. Some of it's
No,
well-meaning. Like to me, if you
absolutely.
let's think about some of the things that we hear financially, right? Pay cash for everything. Don't borrow money, right? And there are times when that's great advice, and then there are times when it's an extreme that doesn't apply to that person's particular information or a situation. I think of like a comparison would be, they tell you should always buy a car, buy a car and it's yours. And when it's not really yours, unless you have all the cash up front, you're still paying somebody, you're still paying interest, and then just drive that car till the wheels fall off. Well, some people don't drive that much, right? There may be someone who is in a pinch and needs a car and they drive 5,000 miles a year. And there may be a scenario where leasing makes more sense to them, right? It's renting the machine instead of buying the machine. Maybe they don't want to have to worry about maintenance and finding a good mechanic, right? When you lease a car, those are things you don't have to worry about. So all of the things that you're describing, right? The personal element of, hey, here are the things that I bring with me in terms of the way I interact with money. Here's what society says I should do with money. I need someone to kind of bridge the gap.
Yeah, that is such a good point because it can't, everyone thinks there is no one size fits all. That's the reality, and now you're a business owner. Okay, well, all that other stuff doesn't really work because there is good debt and there's leverage and there's all kinds of different things. I mean, you can take everything to extremes, but you're exactly right. You can commit to having a car payment the rest of your life, but what are you doing with it? Like you said, you're never going to, it's a depreciating it's a depreciating asset,
Yeah.
right? It's a liability. Now in business, I had a fleet of trucks. They're on the road making money, right? So like they're making money. And if they're
Hmm.
down for a day, I'm upset because that's the day it doesn't make money. So the longer it's in the shop, the less money I'm making. So you get to that point where what is the law of diminishing returns? Just staying with the vehicle thing. Eventually it's like, well, I'm dropping 350 a month in repairs
Hmm.
every month. I think I'll go buy a car
Yeah.
because
We,
the downtime and everything, right? It's just it just
we are
gets to that point.
unfortunately in this situation right now. So my wife, she had a 2009 because I'm the type of person where I'm like, we're gonna buy that car, we're gonna drive it till the wheels fall off. I don't care if it has 400,000 miles on it. Like if it's
Right.
running and it's paid for, what's the point of replacing it? And like I said, everything doesn't work all the time because we took her car to the shop and she needed a new engine. And it's a 2009, and they said it's going to be $7,000 to replace the engine.
Mhm.
And in my mind, I'm like, we could put a new engine in this car and it might go another 100,000 miles. But man, my wife barely drives at all, right? So it's
Yeah.
like, would it make
Right.
more sense to go lease a car for a few years, instead of putting $7,000 into a car that's probably only worth $5,000,
Right.
hoping that I get another 100,000 miles over it. So one of the things, especially when it comes to financial literacy, I actually think this is unique to financial literacy, but you can tell me your perspective. I feel like in most areas of life, if you came across somebody whose mind was never changed, ever, that would be a red flag, right? Like of all the experiences that you have in life, to say that you don't have a stance that has changed throughout your entire life is a pretty
Yeah.
dangerous person to me, right?
Right.
I,
Yes.
I also think it's dangerous when people have something they preach that they feel works for 100% of people, right?
Right.
Like I feel like
Yeah.
in any other area of life, if you said this works 100% of the time, we would say that doesn't sound right, right? There's so many different unique situations. But something about financial literacy, we establish these rules of thumb about how much you should save, whether you should buy a house, whether you should buy a car, and we act like they work 100% of the time for every single person and that our minds should never be changed about it. And to me, that's really dangerous.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you, Brenton, 100%, because, well, I've lived long enough now where pretty much everything's changed. You kind of you kind of think, well, you're exactly right. And what I've learned with more people I work with, because I coach business owners and everything, I work with a lot of different people, they're all there's a lot of similarities and patterns that people repeat in business, but the money aspect is very unique to each situation. There's no do it this way. Take my 10-day course to perfect money management. Okay, I mean, I can't write something like that, right? Because it is so uniquely applicable to that client and where they're at in their business journey. That alone, it's like, hey, okay, he's doing 15 million a year now. He's doing 2 million. But guess what? The guy doing 2 million is managing his money way better than the guy who's doing 15.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not a numbers, it's not volume like we talked about earlier. It's not that. So it's very specific. So I would imagine that's what you have to. You have to really dive into your clients. I don't know. Maybe give us a little kind of a high view rundown. I mean, is it you going through habits, spending habits, operational stuff? Like, what does that actually look like when you're looking and trying to help someone?
It's a mix of numbers and emotions. So the numbers element of it is you do have to know the basic information of tell us about your cash flow, tell us about your tax return, tell us about your investments, your employee benefits. But wherever a person is, they got there as a result of not just their behaviors, but like the negative and positive things they bring with them. So we might go through the numbers, but then we're going to do things like goal setting, where I want to know what are the most important things to you financially. But I also want to know and ask questions about, like, hey, if I'm meeting with a couple, tell me about your backgrounds, right? What did you bring to this relationship before the relationship started? Were your parents savers? Did your parents have money? What did you see? What did you take from what you saw? Because to me, if I'm trying to articulate a plan, if I'm trying to work in concert with them, but I don't know anything about what they're bringing to the table, I missed all the context that's going to actually make them stick to the plan, right? So, we talk about the car with my wife and talk about minds changing, right? I got married when I was 25 years old. Almost everything I think and thought about marriage at 25 has changed, right? From perspective. But also, there's a lot of stuff that I brought to my relationship from what I experienced as a child, from what I observed, that was completely different than what my wife observed. And you have to have an understanding of both for us to have like our version of that thing, right? Because it can't just be my thing, it can't just be her thing. And it's the same with finances. It's like I have the numbers, I have my opinion on how this should go, but now I have to have the emotional element of like what makes you tick? What did you bring to the table so we can find something that works for you?
Yeah, there's a lot of power in that because again, we go back to the individual aspect. Everyone's got a different experience. 100% of the thing doesn't work 100% of the time, right? That marriage, there's no better example. Okay, you are two become one, except in finances. Okay,
Hmm.
so it's like you start looking at that, and I had to do the same thing. My wife was very different than I was, right? I'm a hard charger. I'm getting out there. I'm doing stuff. Of course I'm right. Just ask me, and I'm doing all this wrong stuff, thinking I'm right, and she's just shaking her head like, and I could give you stories like it's crazy. And we've been married 26 years now. Just the other day was our anniversary, and I'm thinking, man, all the dumb stuff I did, and you're still here. Just from a financial standpoint, it's just pretty amazing. But you're right, and that experience. I really love this aspect because I think you hit the nail on the head here. You have to go. You have to talk about, well, whatever their parents. What did they do with money? What was it? Because I had a horrible relationship with it, right? Because I watched my parents and we had nothing, but it could I go on and on, but it's just you see how that operated, and you can't just naturally do something different. You have to be unbelievably intentional to change that, because that was 15, 18 years of your life watching this happen, operating underneath that system, even though you may never had a job, right? You never, but you operated underneath that belief system of how those finances worked in your family. Were they arguing all the time? Does everyone have a separate? That's a big thing. Separate bank accounts, stuff like that. It's a whole nother topic, right? We get into all that kind of stuff, but you start looking at that, and if you don't dig into that to see, and I love what you said, is they're not going to stick to a plan
Yeah.
because they
And
can't. They have made the switch, right?
yeah, and they're not going to feel heard. So, I have a client family where one person in the relationship is extremely conservative with money to the point that, it frustrates their spouse. Now, the more you dig into that person's relationship and childhood, you would know that at one point their family growing up had a lot of money and their family lost it all.
Yeah.
And it happened at an age where the child doesn't really know what's going on. They just know we have things, and all of a sudden we don't have things.
Mhm.
And I don't know the context to it. I don't know the mistake you made. It may have been a mistake that I would never make in a million years, but I know that at some point in time everything was taken from us. And now, as an adult, it is very hard for them to confront risk in any form, right? Because to them, they're looking and saying, at some point, I could lose everything. And I have to know that, because if I'm trying to talk to this person about an investment, I know that based on the way that the market moves, even the most catastrophic of scenarios would be like a 30% loss. They're not going to go from $100 to $0. That's never going to happen. But if I don't know that that person really does think that they could end up with $0 left, I'm never going to be able to get them to move forward. So I can take that information from that client and I can say, let me show you what the market looked like in 2008, right? What do you think is the next worst time that could have happened? 2001, right? What do you think the market did in World War II, right? Let me show you what has happened in the most like catastrophic times in human history, and you still didn't have a 50% loss, right? Does that make you feel any more comfortable that we're not talking about 100% loss? And it does. But the only reason I would go that deep into the well of information is because I now know this person at one point in time lost everything, and we can't get them to take any steps forward until that's acknowledged and respected.
Yeah, that's really insightful. It really is. I love it, because I think until they can, th- their brain is based on logic, right? They are hardcore numbers. I have this, and if I lose that, I have nothing, right? And they're kind of looking at it, and they're kind of going. That's fear in general, right? What do they call it? False evidence appearing real. They don't look at real numbers. Like, well, what has the stock market done? When were the most millionaires ever made at one time? Oh, during the Great Depression. That's unusual. Okay. I mean, you start looking at things
Yeah,
like, how does that happen? Right. So
yeah,
there's a big mindset issue here, obviously, and I think that's a big bullet point here is that for me, the mindset, the way to change, I had to teach my children because I did a lot of wrong things. And oh, wait, you talk 08, 09, I lost everything. Lost my business, lost my home. I did all kinds of stupid, right? And I got 6 little kids, 4 years and younger, and a wife, and like, we have nothing. Better get a plan together. right? So,
Yeah.
so I hit the nothing part. We got to figure it out, made the long comeback and everything else. But it's that it was interesting. Just real quick. So my wife, I got married. I was about 34. I met her. We got married. So she came in when things were good, right? Business is booming. I'm doing everything, really good. That was 99. So hey, next 10 years, everything's good. Then all of a sudden, the carpet's yanked out. It's zero. Okay, from just getting better. And if you haven't, I always tell people, if your spouse has not been through the business building process, buckle up.
Mhm.
Okay. Because if you went from good, it's like the same guy had something and then had nothing. Okay. And I'm an entrepreneur. I'm not unemployable. Okay. I'm not an employee. I can't go get a job. Right. So I had to figure out how I'm going to do it the next thing. And you do it. But that journey, holy cow.
Mhm.
And then you add these money issues. I call them issues, meaning mindsets. These money mind and everything else, like because you didn't have to, like, we didn't have to do that together when we got married. We were just rolling. She quit work first day our child arrived, boom, but she never went back to work. And still hasn't. That was our deal. We'll raise kids, we'll homeschool, we'll do all this stuff, but boy, navigating the finances, now you have one income, an entrepreneur, and trying to do all that stuff. I'm not wishing that on anybody, Brenton,
Mhm.
because it's no fun at all. But you can do it, right? But
Absolutely.
you gotta shift that mindset.
Absolutely.
So where would you go? So let's kind of get into. Well, I know we've been talking about what you do, but we're going to really get into what you do now. Okay, so let's talk about that because I really love the niche that you focused on. Okay, because I think, like you said, it's ignored. It's almost, what's weird today, and I could be totally off base in this. I don't think so though, because I've kind of been in the high and the lows and the in betweens. Like, man, you make 100 grand a year, you're like barely middle class. That used to be like you're killing it. Like you're in the upper, 100,000 used to be like you're in the top 5%
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
earners,
No.
and now it's like, well, I still got to buy food.
Or
Like
pay back student loans, right? Or
that's right.
or buy a
Yeah.
house that is completely unaffordable. Yeah, things have shifted even since when I started. This is year 17 for me.
Oh.
And the amount of money that it costs to just exist, not to thrive, but
Mhm.
to exist, has increased at such a rapid pace in the last 10 years.
Mhm.
When you look at housing, when you look at how much people are taking out for school and things of that nature. So it's really incredible. And for me, the reason that that niche is so important is it's my family's story. So my mother's side of the family, her father's from Memphis, so very low income. Her mother's from Belize, so they met when my grandfather was in the Air Force and settled in Memphis, and their house became like headquarters for all of my grandmother's family that was coming over from Belize to get into the States. So she would have cousins in the house. She already had three siblings. And at any given point in time in this like 900 square foot house, they're having two or three cousins, aunts, uncles with them living as well. And they would just be there for a while and then they would kind of go across the country after they got settled in the States. My dad was living a very similar experience. His mother's from the States, his dad's from Jamaica. And their house was kind of the thing where it's like, yeah, we got uncles and aunts and cousins who are coming over from Jamaica. They come here, they get settled, and they disperse. Well, what that taught them was you take care of family, right? That's just what you do. Whether it's physically, emotionally, financially, you take care of family. And none of their family had money. But then my parents did well. My mother is a nurse turned realtor who did well on her own. My father is an emergency room physician. So now they're making more money than all of their other family members. And it's not like my family members are leeching off of them in any way.
Right.
But if they say they need something, or even if they don't say to my parents, if they just, it comes up that they need something, my parents are going to give that money. So we grew up very well, but we also grew up with the stress of my parents are floating three and four households at a time financially. And not only is that stressful, but they don't have anybody to tell them how to manage these resources. So everything is going out the door. It's not being wasted, but it's all going out the door.
Right.
And I watched my father, who has the personality of, I'm just going to go earn it. try to meld with my mother, who is, if I owe somebody a single dollar, I'm as stressed as can be, right? And watch them just butt heads financially for their entire career. And they don't regret any money that they've given to anybody, but they definitely regret not having anybody in their corner to tell them, man, if you had put this in place at 40, you'd be in a completely different place by now. So when I started in this industry, I didn't really have an aim. I just wanted to make a little money. But then I started coming across household after household after household where they're earning really good money, and you would assume that they had it more together than they did. And it's my parents all over again, and I just recognized that there was a role that I could play in not looking for people who already had wealth. And there's nothing wrong with that. But if I could like teach him how to get there, I would, it's almost like I feel like I was giving my parents what they didn't have when they were growing up. And it means more to me than working with somebody who comes to me wealthy already.
Yeah, that's so good. I've done it with my kids. I'm like, listen, and all of them, they're what are they now? 21, couple 20s, couple 19s, and a 17, 18-year-old, right? So all my kids are investing in some way or another. Just saw my son. Oh, we're out in Albania. Saw him. He's getting a Marine out there, and uh, same thing. He's got a portion of it. All of them have this port. They just pull up their portfolio and show me on the phone. I'm like, I am one happy dad.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is, and like, they're like, I put 500 a month on this. I go, I love you.
Yeah.
You're like 19 and 20, and you're looking at buying real estate to invest. I'm like, that's what I'm talking about. Like this at that age, to have that awareness and just start doing. I go, I don't care if it was $5 a month. It's building these habits and the stuff, but it's just so great to see. You know what I mean? And they reward themselves. They buy things they want. They're not extravagant with the stuff, but that investment mindset is just I had no clue what that was. That was for the elite.
Yeah.
I was growing up right investment. I was like, I gotta be like a millionaire.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
But that mindset that they have will carry them. And I can't speak for you as a father, but like you said, you're proud of them, you love them, and that ability to provide them something that you felt like you didn't have,
Right.
it makes it even more sweet, right? Because it's like it's not, if we all had it, yeah, it would still be sweet. But to know that something that you had to go through, they don't have to go through,
Yeah.
makes it mean so much more. And in my scenario, I'm talking about the things that I wish my parents had. And when you look at how grateful people are when you kind of guide them to the other end of that experience, right? You came to me like this and now you look completely different financially. It may be something that was like the smallest piece of financial advice that you could have offered. It didn't even mean that much to you when you gave it, but it meant
Right.
everything in the world to that person. And being a part of those experiences, man, it's so fulfilling.
Yeah, that's it's like me working with business owners, right? When I free them from the business, where it now runs itself, and they can be with their family, they have the money to go do things with their family. This is just sitting at the dining room table. They can go and do things, enjoy things, be at the kids' games. That's where the joy comes from in my business. And I call I just say families,
Yeah.
because businesses destroy families all the time because these people are trapped. What I call the owner prison, right? They're there, they got to open the door, they got to be there, they're doing all this stuff, they got to do all the dailies, and it's just like mine is freeing them from that, right? And once they get everything systemized, they got people doing their delegating, right? It's like, oh, I went from 75 hours a week to 20. I like this. This is kind of fun now. This is okay, but the first 10 years kind of sucked. but
Yeah.
but we get into that place just like you. And I think the financial thing is more difficult for you than do what you do than what I do. Okay. Because I can see results pretty quickly, right? Like I can get in and bam, bam, bam in 90 days, 6 months, a year. It's like a whole new thing, right? Double, triple income. They got freedom. It's like, wow, that's cool. Where I would find it challenging to be in your position is it's a long game. Okay, right. So talk about that a little bit, because I think a lot of people don't have the right impression of true investment.
It's investments and it's also just the value of financial advice in general. But I'll break down the difference. With investments, there are certain behaviors that you'll ask someone to exhibit. There's certain things that you'll ask them to put in place. And just because of the amount of time it takes for money to grow and money to compound, they may not see the benefit of it till 10 years after you tell them. And they may not agree with what you told them. Right. So it's like it's even worse than them not seeing the benefits. It's like I think he's wrong until 10 years down the line. And you kind of have to lean on the trust that you've built with that person to just say, trust me, this is going to work out well. Even worse, there are some things that they will never be the one to see the benefit from. So when I tell someone who doesn't want to pay for a big life insurance policy, you need this life insurance policy. Your family is not going to be able to financially survive unless you get this life insurance policy. Well, I may be right. They'll never see it. Their family will see it when they die. And that has been, something that I've experienced as well, where it's like, we've delivered life insurance benefits to families where it's like we got them that extra million, that extra 500,000 that they didn't want to pay for, but because they agreed to pay for it, now we can tell that widow or that widower, you will be okay financially. But the original purchaser isn't the one who sees the value. When it comes to financial advice, we charge people not a small amount of money, right?
Right.
And when you charge people, they expect in most cases that immediate turnaround. They expect I gave you $1, you give me back my dollar's worth of value, and I should be able to see it right here in my hand. With financial advice, there's so much of it that's like out in the ether. It's nebulous and it's not always in a straight line either. So it's like you give me $1, but the value may come 2 years from now, but you owe me $1 next year as well, right? So
Yep.
it's like,
Yep.
how do I find a way of showing you the progress that's been made, even though you don't feel it? And even though there may be stretches of time where your life hasn't changed that much, so we're not doing a lot of heavy lifting work, but that's because we're working the plan that we already created. So we come across that all the time where we have somebody who in year one, we do a whole lot of heavy lifting, a whole lot of document gathering, a whole lot of big value added. In year two, we're working on the plan that we established in year one, but because it's not so much heavy lifting, they're like, well, what am I paying for this year? Right. And that's actually, as a business owner, been one of the things that we've had to work really hard to address. Like, how do we show intangible value when we're asking people to pay for something 1 year after they had a whole lot of tangible value? It's been a big thing that we've had to try to make sure we have an answer for.
Yeah, that is got to be a challenge. That's for sure. I totally get it. Yeah, I do a lot. I talk a lot about that too in with my business owners is how do you drive value? So just the topic of value is it totally fits this. Like, and you have an uphill battle. Okay, more so than someone who's delivering a product or service. Not that you're not a service, but the tangible. I cut your grass, you pay me, right? I cut a little better this time. My lines are actually straight. Whatever. Like you can command different things for different product or services. That's what I mean. That's why I was curious because again, it's the intangible in a sense, right? When we look at this, I remember on my vacation with my son, he's showing me, pulls up his phone, he was looking, look at that, Amazon's down 10%. Like he's got money in Amazon. He's like, okay, I'm getting ready to buy. I go, give it a little time, and I mean, the kid's 18. He's like, I loved it. I just love him showing me and walking me through this stuff. But he's doing this stuff on his own with a friend whose father's also a great financial advisor and is, whatever. So he's got good guidance, right?
Mhm.
He's not, I'm air quoting, paying for it, but he's listening, right, to people who have done it well and stuff. And I love to see it there. But I asked him, it's funny you say it because I'm like, well, what would you pay for that advice? Because you're only in this, you've been doing this like a year and a half, 2 years. So again, at 16, he started investing, right? So he's like, I don't know. I go, yeah, see, that's the problem with free.
Yeah.
That's the problem with free. You think you're like got something you really don't have. If you can't put a dollar amount on it, what would that be worth to you? I mean, I always tell people, Brent, I go, if I'm going to buy a car and it's $30,000, okay, I don't not buy it because it's $30,300. Okay, if it's 300 more, that's not a yes or no on the deal because I value it far more than 30,000. whatever that is. It's going to start every time. It's going to where I want to go. I'm going to look great. Whatever the reasons are, there's a lot more value attached to that money than what you're actually paying for. Right? Does that make sense?
Yeah,
So like it's the same principle with you, right? There's a big return at the end. Right? It's giving you continually, it's every month, it's year after year, year after year. And again, if you start young, that's what I'm really excited about my kids. You build them at 18, 19, by the time you're 40, you have
that's it.
22 years of investment. Okay. When you start at 35, that same person will never make what you're going to make. You know what I mean? Like you'll be at 60, like I'm golden.
Yeah.
They'll be like, I won't have enough.
And in that process, there, in the planning process, there are going to be things where you can look and you can say, you started this at 18. Let's say that your son paid his friend's father. That would be something where you can say, hey, you paid me this much. Look how much your account has grown. It's so worth the money you paid because look at the growth of this stock. Well, what if there is something that your son brings to the table and it's not an account balance, but it is, okay, well, if you don't fix this behavior, this personality trait, it's going to stop you from being able to accumulate success. For example, we might have someone who is in corporate America and they're so grateful for their job that when they do their annual reviews, their boss says, we're going to give you a cost of living increase. They don't want to risk making their boss mad. So they just accept the cost of living increase, right? They get equity compensation. They said, we're going to give you 100 shares of company stock. Well, what if that person is so timid that their financial advisor is able to tell them, do you realize that like this is a negotiation? And when they come to the table, they're not going to give you their best and final offer. They're expecting you to counter. And if you don't counter, you're leaving more shares or more money on the table. Well, that person may go 20, 30 years and they may get 3 or 4 pay raises because now they understand this is a negotiation. But is it a guarantee that they connect that to my advice? Not necessarily, right? So it's like I'm sitting there saying, dude, you got $20,000 raise when they offered you a $5,000 raise because of a conversation we had 10 years ago that says never accept the first offer. But you have so forgotten that.
Yeah,
And
right.
and when they forget, it's up to me as a business owner to have something in my process that gently reminds them.
Love
And
it.
that's why we try to build in things where we remind them of recommendations that we've made. They may not have taken and accepted them, but we made the recommendations, connections that we've put into their life to try to make sure that when we come back and say, hey, it's time to renew for another year, they're not being responsible for reminding themselves of the value we've provided.
That is so good. Okay. Because I think about this often. Okay. Whether I'm coaching or I got other businesses, it's data. Okay. It's literally like, okay, what did we talk about today? Okay. I met with my client. Like I said, what did we talk about? Because I can just roll. I can free fly. I'm really good at what I do. I'm like been 35 years back. I can do stuff. If I don't track anything, it's awesome. They get great stuff, things happen. But there's going to come a time when either it's going to get rocky, that relationship is going to be a struggle, things start to restrict a bit, and they're going to go, maybe I don't need to pay for this coaching. I've been doing this for a couple of years, and if I don't have the data, well, yeah, that could be true. Let's walk through what we've done from the beginning. Boom, remember this, remember that, remember we're doing this and we built this and this and this and this is why you're here. Like you said, I love that you do that because it's probably more difficult for you, like because these are things that you have to be aware of, that you're given these little gold nuggets, right? You're popping this stuff in there, you're educating them, right? And people have they have a different value in education, right? It's not formal where you're not giving them a test, they're not getting a grade, though they are making money, you know but I love that you're able to remind them of that. And you've got, it's a great takeaway for anyone who's in business and they have a service or product. Either way, you've got to understand with your customers, you've got to remind them who you are. Okay, I'll just say it, right? Do you know who I am? Do you understand
Yeah.
who you've hired? Like, I don't mean you can say that to them, but the reality is like they have to be reminded because they're not going to remember. That is
Yeah.
the nature of human beings. They'll start taking the credit.
There's a certain level of self-promotion that you have to become comfortable with as a business owner because I don't think, I would hope that my friends and family would agree that I'm not the type of person who needs to be out front all the time, that I'm not the type of person who needs, that praise and adulation all the time. But to your point, if I don't remind you of how qualified I am, then I'm not going to drive new business. And for the business that I already have, if I don't remind you of the value that we've already provided, then you're going to be looking at me saying, well, what have we done? What are we going to do next year? And I got to be able to tell you, in a polite and friendly way, are you serious? Like,
Yeah.
look at all this stuff we've already done. And even if we don't provide that same level of value in the year ahead, you underpaid me for what I've already given you.
Mm.
So it's not linear. It's not straightforward. There's going to be years where we provide $20,000 worth of value for the 5,000 we paid. And there may be years where you feel like it's $1,000 of value. But guess what? You're $15,000 in the hole from the year before. And that's fine. But we have to make sure that we keep account of what's already been done.
Yeah, I think the review process, what people need to work into their operation system. Okay, well, what you do is an operation system, right? How you do, like a lot of you get with people. Okay, well, let's okay. So 6 months ago we were here, and you give them this recap. You like start every time you get together. You give them a recap, and people are like, oh yeah. And the thing called when we do webinars and you're pitching all these, here's all the stuff you're gonna get, right, and here's the bonuses and this. It's called the stack, right, and it's really effective because you know what people remember? Only the last thing you told them.
Hmm.
Okay. So okay, you're gonna get this, this, and this, and this. Great. And there's more. You're gonna get this bonus. It's gonna be this, this, and this. So you get this, this, and this, and this, plus this, this, and this. Now there's still a little more. You're gonna get this, but you get this, then you go all the way back to the top and you keep repeating everything each time. So you got four different sections with four things in it. You got 16 things you keep telling them. So by the time you get to the end and the real call to action, they they take all of it because they've heard it so many times. Now, when you say it's $10,750, they go, man, that's cheap,
Yeah.
right? So when we think about this from a business standpoint with ongoing clients like you have, like I have, there has to be this kind of recap of where they've been, what you provided, and it's not in a look at me way. It's continue to remind them of the value so they're more comfortable moving forward. Because when they start to doubt, okay, and this is just my perception, when that little bit of doubt and they start thinking about that and another little thing happens, they haven't been reminded they're going to pull the plug or they're going to get influenced by someone else who's going to come with the new shiny thing. They do what you do, but better, right? And all that kind of stuff. So I'm just being real. I mean, there's competition out there, right? We're all battling against competitors. Everyone wants someone else's money, right? They all want this stuff. So if you don't understand this process, I love you brought this up because this is, I mean, there's two things in business you got to do, right? It's get clients and keep clients. Those are the two things. Okay, we're talking about keeping them. That's more important than getting them.
I'll tell you two things about that come to mind. I was having a conversation with my wife, and she is, immensely talented. She's a product marketer. So she works for, corporations large and small throughout her career, but she also does floral design just as a hobby. So there was a period of time where she was in between jobs and she was trying to figure out if she could like get the floral design business off the ground. And I don't know how familiar you are with that industry, but the margins in that industry are crazy low. It's very hard to get margin in floral design. So she gets right off the bat like a few, really good sized events. And she's not thinking about pricing. She's just thinking about how good the event is. So she basically makes no profit. She really lost money on these events, right? Then she has another one where she makes money. She fixed the price and things of that nature. And then it went completely dry. And I was having a conversation with her and I was telling her, I said, when you work for yourself, it's much easier to make 200,000 once than it is to make $100,000 every year.
Right.
It's so hard to establish recurring revenue. It's much harder than the big bumps, right? Anybody can stumble into a big bump. Can you do something that's consistent every single year? And it reminded me that I have a mentor And he's known me since I was 8 years old, and I worked in his firm for 12 years before I started my own. And he was telling me a story as I was building my book of business and my clientele. When he was in the industry and he first started, it was a very like ring the bell sales environment, right? Like who can do the most applications in a week, that type of thing. And nobody was thinking about recurring revenue. They were just thinking about just doing the most business that they possibly could. And he said, I remember sitting in a sales meeting early in the year, and there was an advisor there who he thought was like the biggest and baddest and did so well. And the guy was just so stressed out that it was the start of the year because he had no recurring revenue. So every single year he's killing it, but he's also killing himself because he's having to start. And he said, that advisor said, ugh, he said, I just feel like I'm having the same year every year of my life. Meaning in January, I got to look in the mirror and say, I got to get up and do that exact same amount of work or more. And I don't have anything to fall back on. And to me, that terrified me. And it terrified my mentor. And I just think to myself, like, what am I building that's recurring? How am I going to do this again next year without having to put in more time and more effort? Because that's very, very difficult to do when you're in business. And, I see a lot of businesses who start out. I don't see a lot of businesses who stick around.
Right.
And to me, if I see somebody who's celebrating their 10th anniversary, it could be the tiniest business on earth. You know, I'm going to celebrate with them more than I am somebody who hit a big lick in
Right.
year one or year two.
Yeah, it's we call it LPV, lifetime profitable value. So, what is a client worth to you over 10 years, over 20 years? That's how you have to look, even from a business valuation standpoint. If you want to sell, well, do you have recurring customers or do they only buy from you once? Because the reality is, if someone does buy from you once, unless you're a complete knucklehead, they'll buy from you again. And if you don't develop a way for them to give you their money, okay, that's on you. Okay. You need to find a way that people can happily donate to your cause. Okay. And that's feeding your family and going up and doing whatever you got to do. But it's massive. A lot of guys, I also had a roofing company for a bunch of years, and guys would do a roof. And, okay. See you in 30 years. That literally was like their thing, like you'll be good for, I'm like, why would you ever say that? They have siding, they have windows, I, man, I'll come back every year to talk to them. They have $100,000 of my money. Okay, I over the next 10 years, they're worth 100, somewhere 200, somewhere $300,000 to my company. How do you maintain that relationship? Because you're not going to go and talk about the roof every week, right? So I did a really simple thing. I said, if we put a new roof on, I'm like, oh, by the way, part of the warranty is we come back every year and we inspect what we installed. No charge. We'll be up on the roof, let you know. We'll know when we're coming. We'll let you know everything we go. That's just a sales call. I'm going to see what else is wrong. Hey, windows are looking worn. Oh, the siding's here. Whatever I got, hey, yeah, everything looks good up there. We did our job. But I noticed this. The gutters are looking a little. You want covers? A lot of leaves up there. You want to get rid of that expense? Like you just keep selling. And you're going there to perform a warranty, right? So it's really people like, oh, that's interesting. I go with lifetime profitable value. You have to think like you're saying, recurring income is huge. Why do you think all the car washes now just selling packages? 25 bucks a month. Come every day. Come twice a day. Clean your car. We don't care. Give me that 25. Oh, now they have 2,000 customers paying $25 a month. I'll take that. Okay, whether they come, whether it rains, whether it shines, it does it's freezing, it doesn't matter. They're getting paid. Right? It's a beautiful thing. It's really a beautiful thing.
It's hard to turn your brain off when you are a business owner, because to me, I walk in a restaurant, or I walk in a business, and I see things that people who have never run a business for themselves don't see.
Yep.
I see how long it's taken to turn a table. I'm like,
Yep.
how's this place profitable? Everybody's been sitting here at this table for 2 hours, right? Like, why are there all these people just standing around in the kitchen? You you notice those types of things, and I can't turn that part of my brain off. And then when I am on the other side of what is a great operation, but I know what they're doing, like at the car wash, when they're like, oh, I can just load up your car and you can get the next. I'm like, nope, nope, nope. It's something like, no, I get it, but no, I'm good, right?
Yeah.
It's hard to turn my brain off.
Yeah, I'm with you. I was like I said, I was just in Albania and, and doing the same thing. They're a different culture, right? Obviously. It's not here. So you go eat, it's just hang out. They serve you, they come, and you never see them again. You got to go to them to pay. They're not going to come up. I'm like, you guys, and I'm looking like you just said. I'm telling my wife, these guys know what turning tables is all about. Oh my gosh, like this is insane. Like in the Italian restaurants back home, they make the chairs uncomfortable. Okay, they want them to leave. The food's great, but these chairs suck. You know what I mean? Because they want you to go. There's only so many hours in the night. You know what I mean? So they want to turn 150 meals. Let's go. But it's. You're exactly right. I'm that way all the time because that's what I do. So I just see all this inefficiencies and everything else. But there again, a cultural thing. It was really interesting to watch. How people operate. It becomes the norm. It's just a different way of doing things. They still do really well, amazing food. It was an incredible food experience and the whole thing. And but you're right. It's looking at that, and people come back because that's the culture. So if you came there and you wanted to rush them, they'd have no business, right? So they have indoor and outdoor, and people are both 'cause they still smoke a lot there. So they kind of make them sit outside to smoke, But it's patios and everything. So they really combine. It was really unique to watch what they did to overcome that. They're going to be here for 2 hours, and they only spent $112,
Yeah.
okay, for a family of four or something. You know what I mean? So it's like, okay, well, so yeah, you're right. I'm sitting there doing the math in my head all the time, watching how things operate. So this is really, really interesting. But yeah, you're exactly right. So I think that the recurring income is a big takeaway for everybody, regardless of your industry. You've got to find ways to do that. It needs to become a focus because if you're chasing a new customer, okay, I'll go back to roofing, storm chasing. You may be familiar, right? Place gets a huge hailstorm. All these companies show up, right? They start selling new roofs and replacement, and they have subcontracts, and they go there and they spend a year. They do 30 million in business, but then they're gone. They literally blow with the wind to the next storm, right? So that is like I look at that and I go, well, what are you actually going to sell as far as your business? You don't have anything because you're weather dependent, right? So you're not out doing a lot of retail sales. You don't have recurring income because you're leaving. That was in Alabama, and now you're over in Texas, and you're not anywhere and everywhere at the same time. So you don't really have a book to sell. So it's kind of interesting. Now, if you're smart, talking about financial responsibility, you're banging out 30 million a year. You better be doing the right thing with that money. Because you're really not going to get anything for your company when it comes time to shut down.
Yeah,
Nothing of consequence, right?
absolutely.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, it's just such a fascinating. I really love the whole financial advisement aspect when done right, Brenton, because again, it's a big education process. So when I look, so I'll take what we're just talking about, turning over tables, everything else. I look at your business, and I'm like, ooh, it's like it's such a challenging educational process. You have to educate people. Because we talk about financial literacy, which means you have to educate them so they know this. So it seems like, and correct me if I'm wrong, there's a lot of upfront work. You know what I mean? There's a lot of upfront work to kind of get them in the groove, and it's probably ongoing. Like you said, first year a lot of heavy lifting. Second year not so much, but you're still in an educational process. And I think that's where you're driving your value too, because you're still actually teaching them planning, right? Deciding where this money's going to go and everything. So there's a lot still going on. So I don't think a lot of people understand that aspect. I mean, you got to know your stuff, but you also
Yeah.
have to be patient because it's people's money. Again, with all the different things, you're just not going to pull the trigger because you said so, right?
There there are things where you're trying to keep in mind that there are times when um, you do have to, for something that no one wants to feel salesy, be salesy.
Right.
And it's up to you to have the quality of character, the quality of morals, to only use that skill set for the benefit of the client. So the example that I used at the beginning of the episode was trying to get someone to understand the value of purchasing life insurance that they don't want to purchase. Well, I've seen so many sales techniques that, that there are things that I know that I can pull from to drive that point home and to move them closer to the sale, because it is a sale of life insurance. But the second that you cross over where you're doing that for your own benefit, you need to leave the industry, right? It's like
Yeah.
I'm bringing these tools out to move them further along in their planning process. There's things that I remember we would talk about when I was in a more salesy environment. They would say, if you have, a life insurance policy or you have an investment that you want someone to choose, bring up three options. And, you want them to choose the middle option, and you want the middle option to look very close to the third option.
Yep.
And there's a lot of social psychology that says nobody wants to be the cheapest, nobody wants to be the most expensive.
Mhm.
They want to fall right in the middle. And there's also sales psychology that says, well, if you want somebody to pick something, they have to have something to compare it to.
Mhm.
So you have to have it be very similar to the less appealing option. Well, those are things that I know that I can bring out if I need it. But again, were I to use that for something that moves me further along, but not the client further along, that trust, even if they don't realize it, is broken.
Mhm.
So, motivation of the client, understanding what they need, being able to push the right buttons when appropriate is a skill set that you have to develop, because there's things that they'll be able to see up front benefit from them that they benefit from. There's things that they won't know for 20 years that they benefited from. And there's things that they will never benefit from. Their children and their grandchildren, even when I'm gone, will be the ones that get the fruit of that experience. But to me, I'm the one who has to make them take that first step.
Yeah, that is such a great point. I mean, we oftentimes we work with people. The great saying is, we're planting trees that will never sit under the shade of. They're doing the same thing. Like you said, to move into that stuff. And uh, there's a lot of ways to close someone in a sale. The problem is who's going to and not to going to have buyer's remorse tomorrow, right? The whole deal is a confidence sale where they're actually, dude, this was killer, man. I got a ton of value. I got this whole thing. This is really set me up. They're not going to go cancel a life insurance policy in 3 months. You know what I mean? Because you were pressured to get into it, and then someone, So you're exactly right. I think the integrity aspect of all sales, of any business, is critical, right? I think it's been lost for a long time with a lot of businesses. Depending who they air quote in here follow, who's telling them how to make money. Money's great, dude. I'm all about making money. I like to make lots of it. It's all good, but I will not do it at the expense of my character, of my integrity, right? I can do really, really well doing it the right way, because I know how much is enough. Okay. I'm not Rockefeller with just $1 more. Well, how much? Just $1 more. Okay. That never ends, right? It's just, I just need one more. They start chasing that terrible scoreboard. It's like people when they're focused on just revenue and not profit. It's the thing we talk about a lot too. Okay, you're doing, 35 million a year in revenue, but you're taking home 200 grand. I think that's broken. I,
I would
I
agree.
think there's a problem with that. Okay. I mean, you're working awfully hard to make nothing. Okay. So it's just, where there's another guy who's doing 3 million a year and he's taking home 500K. You know what I mean? Okay. I want to hang out with that guy. All right. And he's happy.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? And he's going to probably do more and get more, right? And keep more. And that's the beauty of it. It's a similar thing to what you do. And I've really appreciated this, Brenton. This whole conversation has been, this can be a dicey subject. Okay. It gets people kind of squirming when you're talking about their money, how they do, what they do with their money. It's a, man, you're a better man than I am. I couldn't do that. So but you seem to have a gift, right? Just the way you're able to articulate it and really how you're helping your clients and everything else and be able to be in it for 17 years on your own. Dude, that's again, you said about the 10-year guy. I applaud you. That's
thank you.
impressive. That's impressive, man, especially in that particular industry. It says a lot about your character, who you are, how you truly help your people. I really love to see it. It's been an awesome conversation, just absolutely fantastic. So, with that being said, how do people get in touch with you? How do they follow you? You know the drill. How can people connect with you?
The easiest way to find us is newmoneynewproblems.com. That is headquarters for everything we do. So if you sign up for our newsletter, when you go to that site, we have free financial literacy content. We have a weekly podcast, the New Money, New Problems podcast. We have a lot of people in our community who have student loans. So we have a bi-weekly student loan podcast, the Escape Student Loan Debt podcast. But everything starts at newmoneynewproblems.com.
Now, just for everyone, we always talk about business here. New money, new problem. Everything's there. That's how you do it. One place to go. Don't tell them three places to go because they'll go to none. Okay. So, new money, new problems. I like that. I love the whole thing. It's just awesome. So Brent, thank you again for just taking the time today just to share this. I've loved the conversation. It's been awesome. I knew we'd kill it. I had no doubts because, it's just what we do. And for everybody else, we'll see you on the next STS podcast. Thanks for joining me on the Sharpen the Spear podcast. If you're a manufacturing executive and you're serious about unlocking hidden profit, improving frontline leadership, and taking control of your floor, go to grit2lead.com right now. Run the free Sharpened Impact Simulator and discover your biggest opportunities are hiding. Don't leave millions on the table. Sharpen your spear, lead from the front, and win the floor. Until next time, stay sharp.